turn with me in your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 5. We're going to look this morning as the preacher talks about this issue of finances. Recently, Zogby did a poll asking what the number one cultural problem in America is. And overwhelmingly the response was that the biggest problem that we face in America today is greed. And this sentiment has been echoed several times. There was another poll done by Vanity Fair, and 78% of Americans disagree with the famous statement from the movie Wall Street that greed is good. And The Economist did a poll, and it asked readers, what is the deadliest sin? Greed was the number one answer. We all agree greed is a problem. We all agree that this materialism and this greed that is so prevalent today is a cancer on society. The problem is nobody seems to think that they are guilty of greed. The BBC did a survey, and it asked their readers these two questions about the 7 deadly sins. Right? Which sin have you ever committed, and which sin have you committed in the past month? And of the 7 deadly sins, anger, envy, gluttony, greed, lust, pride, and sloth, greed came in absolutely last. It was the one that these people surveyed said, I've not done that, I'm not greedy, and I certainly haven't been greedy in the last month. Maybe I've been lazy, maybe I've been a little arrogant, but I certainly am not greedy. And we all agree that greed is a problem. It's just not a problem with me, is what so many people think. But greed has a way, like few sins, of blinding us to its presence in our life. Greed has a way of showing, of hiding itself from us. And we make a mistake sometimes when we think of greed as a rich person's sin. We think of greed as something that people who have money can have. Right? Greed is somebody else's problem. I think that's why most people don't think that they're greedy, is we say, I don't have much, so what's there to be greedy about? But it's important to understand what the Bible condemns. What the Bible condemns is the love of money. Another way you can put that is what the Bible condemns is the worship of money. See, the Bible condemns us buying into the notion that money can make us happy or money can remove life's problems. That's what it means to worship money. That's really what it means to worship anything, is to say, this is going to be the source of my happiness. This is going to be the source of my joy. This will take away problems. This will answer the questions of life. And we do that with money. We think that if I have more money, I will somehow be happier. If I have more money, then the problems in my life will go away. And when we become convinced that money can bring us happiness and money can remove problems, money then controls us. And quite frankly, money makes us dumb. Pursuit of money, pursuit of greed, it makes us foolish. I read about a guy, and he had a brilliant get-rich-quick scheme. What he was going to do was he was going to counterfeit $1 million bill. And he was going to go to Walmart and just buy a couple of items and then take the change that they gave him. And, if I spend $70 on some groceries, then I'm going to get $999,930 back. That's a good day's work. There's just a problem with that, really a few problems. One, most cashiers don't have $1 million in their register at any given time. Two, spending $1 million bill is going to attract some attention, don't you think? But the biggest problem, there's no such thing as $1 million bill. The highest currency that the United States Mint makes is a $100 bill. So this guy walks up with this $1 million bill and he goes to pay for his items, just trying to act all casually. And of course, the teller was a little bit smarter than he was and went and notified the manager, and the man was arrested. But money has this way of making us do foolish things in pursuit of more. Money has this way of making us do foolish things because we think that if I just have more money, then I will have all my problems taken care of. Things will be so much easier in my life. Everything will be good. And whether you are rich or whether you are poor, people still buy into this lie that money can provide happiness and joy and contentment and fulfillment for us. People spend time daydreaming of having more money. People watch television and read magazines and think, if I just had more, then I could have this and then I would be happy. But the preacher here in Ecclesiastes writes to help us see that really money doesn't do anything that we think it promises. Money doesn't add joy to our life. As a matter of fact, money can become very problematic. So look with me, beginning in verse 10 of Ecclesiastes chapter 5, and we'll read into chapter 6. The preacher writes, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There's a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt. And those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is a father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came. And he shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation and sickness and anger. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun the few days of his life, that God has given him, for this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy in his heart. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind, a man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good. Do not all go to one place? All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool, and what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. Here the preacher writes, and he calls this pursuit of wealth. He calls this life that tries to find happiness in what one has, in always having more and always getting more, that tries to measure a life by how much is in a bank account, that tries to measure a life by the achievements that are done. He says it's vanity, right? It's that vapor. It's here one moment, it's gone the next. It's nothing. It's not something that can be grasped. It's not something that can be held on to. And so he shows us why a life focused on money is dangerous. And there's several things that he tells us about the danger of a life focused on money. And the first thing he tells us is money does not satisfy. Money will not ultimately make you happy. See, he says there that part of the problem, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. It's a basic principle. The more you have, the more you want. Well, we've all seen children, and they go and they think, if I just have this toy, if I just have this, then I will be happy, then I will be fulfilled, then everything in my life will be complete. Every time we go to somewhere, Henry says, Daddy, if I can just have this Batman toy, my life will be perfect. I won't want anything else. But then if you buy Batman, you have to have Robin. And who are Batman and Robin going to fight unless you get the Joker and the Riddler? And to have something is to need more. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, the preacher, he says, if you are seeking after money, if your life is focused on that, you're never going to have enough. Because you're always going to want more. You're always going to think you need more. And the more you have, the less you're satisfied. The more you have, the more you look around you, and the more you see, I'm not fulfilled by things. There's still more out there I don't have. I need to have more. There are people who have more than me. And when your life becomes focused on this, you'll never be satisfied. Money does not satisfy. But secondly, he says money can complicate things. He says there in verse 11, when goods increase, they increase who eat them. What's he saying there? What happens when you watch and somebody who's grown up in a tough environment, they sign their first contract to play professional sports? Man, everybody from the neighborhood calls them, don't they? Hey, man, we grew up together. We go way back, don't we? Hey, can you help me out with this? Right? The preacher is basically saying, when you have more, it attracts more. People come to you. People say, hey, they've got something. I need that from them. And the presence of money, it begins to complicate things in people's life. Even if money doesn't change you, it changes the people around you. That's why Solomon wrote in Proverbs, those who love the rich are many. The Bible teaches that you see, when we have something, others are drawn to that. Right? Because we're all sinful, people use people to get something. And the preacher says, if you have money, you need to understand it's going to complicate your life, because people are going to come, they're going to drive, and they're going to flock into your life to try and share in what you have. And so money complicates things. But third, money creates worry. The more you have, the more you have to worry about. You see people, and I've known some people, and they've always got their phones, and they're checking the stock market all the time because they've got so much tied up in it. A bad day at the stock market can cost them tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And because they have all this money, their life is consumed by worry because there's so much to worry about. Right? If you go back and you realize, hey, I had $1 in my pocket and it's missing, you just say, it was $1. Right? There's a reason people just leave pennies, because it's just a penny. But when it's $100, when it's $1,000, you start to care a whole lot. If a $100 bill falls out of your wallet, you're going to spend a whole lot more time looking for it than if a $1 bill falls out of your wallet. And the preacher here is saying, right, money creates worry. He says that the sleep of a laborer is sweet, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. That is, he's always worrying. This person who's consumed with money, he's always worrying. He's always trying to figure out how he can have more. There was a survey done over the last several years, and every year the survey has said that the thing that causes the most stress in our country is money. 72% of adults report feeling stressed about money at least some of the time, and 22% say that they experience extreme stress about money. 26% of adults report feeling stress about money most or all of the time. And this money, it causes stress, it causes worry, it keeps us up at night, it causes us to panic, it makes us, it basically controls us through our worry. Money creates worry, but fourth, he says money can hurt you. Now this one's strange because we don't think of money as a dangerous thing. We don't think of money as something that can hurt us, but you see what he says? He says this man hoarded money to his hurt. Money can hurt. Money can destroy people. Just if you have the time sometime, just Google lottery winners. See what happens to their life after they come into this windfall of money. I read an article in Forbes. There's a man, what he does is he specializes in what he calls sudden wealth. And he works with people who come into wealth quickly. And he talks about some of the people he's worked with. He talked about a man who won $315 million and said, I wish I had torn that ticket up. Because after winning $315 million, he was robbed. He lost a granddaughter to a drug overdose. He was sued. And to find respite from all the pressure in his life, he started drinking, going to strip clubs, and gambling, and wound up bankrupt. This sudden wealth manager says immediately before or right after a sudden wealth event, such as winning the lottery, many clients experience an almost out-of-body feeling. Anything and everything is possible. It's like Christmas morning every day. But the thing that makes Christmas so special is that it comes once a year. This high cannot last forever. And so most often, as little as a few days or to over 6 months, and then the reality hits them. He talks about they get this feeling of euphoria from coming into money, and so they just buy and they buy and they buy. Buy houses, they buy cars, sometimes they buy businesses, they buy gifts for all their friends. And then as the euphoria starts to die down, they just have to buy more and more and more, and they end up spending more than they make. There was a story about a man named William Post. He had a really tough childhood. And he was in orphanages and foster homes. He had a nomadic adulthood. The day he won $16.2 million, there was only $2.46 in his bank account. And he wins this huge sum of money. Here's a guy who had nothing. Here was a guy whose life was desperate. Here was a guy who you would think all this money would certainly fix the problems in his life. But within 2 weeks, he had blown 2/3 of the money. And within 3 months, he was $500,000 in debt. His brother had even tried to hire a hitman to kill him in order to inherit his winnings. Here's my point. Money doesn't solve life's problems. Money can create problems. And the preacher here, he worries and he wonders and he warns us that we can have money and it doesn't solve things. It actually makes worse, because what money does is it creates this dependency and then it disappears. Money makes us think that we're safe. Money makes us think that we're secure. Money makes us think that everything's okay. But money has a way of disappearing. He talks about a man who has money and he hoards all his money. And he makes an investment in order to get more, but the investment is bad and he loses everything. And then all of a sudden he has a family to take care of, but nothing to take care of them with. See, money lies to us. Money convinces us that if we just have it, then everything will be fine. But money soon goes. Have you ever thought that one of God's mercies in your life is keeping you from having more? You ever thought about that? Sometimes we think, God, why don't you give me more? God, why don't you let me have more money? God, why can't I have nicer things? And what we don't see because our perspective is so limited is God's going, I'm trying to protect you. I don't want you hurt. No, God. No, if I had more, things would be better. God, if I had more, there would be less hurt in my life. God, if I had more, my family could be better taken care of. God, if I had more, everything would be good. But God knows how the world is. God knows how people act. God knows what money does to us. And sometimes I think it's God's mercy in our life that keeps us from having more. He even mentions there in verse 17, this rich man eats in darkness and vexation and sickness and anger, because he spends all his life pursuing money, because that's what his life is about, because that's what he's focused on. He doesn't have any relationships. He's lonely, and there's no one to take care of him. There's no one to help him out. Money can hurt. But finally, he warns, money doesn't last. That's the thing. Money doesn't last. Right? You have it and you spend it. You can save it and you spend it. It can go away in bad business decisions. It can be stolen from you. It can be seized by the government. It can be taxed. But the bottom line is, we die. That's what he says. He says, all go to the same place. All have the same end. And sometimes we spend our life just trying to have more and more and more stuff, but all it is more and more and more stuff to leave behind. All it is more and more stuff that we cannot take with us to the grave. And if we spend a life focused on money, if we spend a life focused on this stuff, the preacher says, you don't take it with you. You can save it, you can try and use it, but it's just temporary because it doesn't go to the next life. He even presents to us a case study of this misery. Down in chapter 6, he speaks of somebody. We don't know if this is true. We don't know if it's hypothetical. But he writes of a man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them. That is a chilling statement. Here is somebody, and God blesses this person. God blesses them with everything. They've got money. They've got power. They've got fame. They've got everything their heart desires, but there is no joy in their life. Because God doesn't give them the power to enjoy this that they have. Here is somebody that has everything. Here is somebody that everybody looks to and thinks they must be happy, they must be fulfilled, they must be content because look at all they have. But deep inside of them there is a void, there is an emptiness because there is no joy. See, a life of pleasure is nothing without joy. You can have everything. You can have everything this world offers. You can have all the stuff. You can have the nicest house. You can have the fastest cars. You can have the biggest boat. You can have the nicest clothes. You can have top of the line everything. That will not bring you joy. And with all that stuff, if there is no joy, all there is emptiness. If you are a parent or grandparent of a kid probably around 7 to 12-ish, you've probably heard of a game called Minecraft. It's been one of the top-selling apps on phones and iPads and stuff for years. And the guy who created Minecraft, last year, Microsoft bought his company for $2 billion. So this guy comes into this huge sum of money, and with it he bought a $70 million home that was described as having insane amenities like towers full of M&Ms, bars, a movie theater, 15 bathrooms, each equipped with toilets that cost $5,600. Right, that's high living, isn't it? Right, this guy worth just in a matter of moments, became worth $1.3 billion. Bought the nicest home in Beverly Hills, had everything. But one night, this man who had come into all this money, he was up late, and he began to tweet. And his tweets were some of the saddest things that I've ever read. He wrote on August 29th, 2015, "The problem with getting everything is you run out of reasons to keep trying, and human interaction becomes impossible due to imbalance." A few minutes later, he wrote, "Hanging out in Ibiza with a bunch of friends and partying with famous people, able to do whatever I want, and I've never felt more isolated." A couple minutes later, "When we sold the company, the biggest effort went into making sure the employees got taken care of, and they all hate me now." 4:53 a.m., just a minute later, "Found a great girl, but she's afraid of me and my lifestyle, and went with a normal person instead." Here's this man who has everything. And he's lonely, and he's hurting, and he is empty. Because though he has a house far nicer than anything I can imagine, there's no joy. And the preacher writes of somebody in chapter 6 the same way. There's this man, and he has everything. And he speaks in hyperbole. He has 100 children. He lived for many years. Right? In that culture, the key to happiness was thought to be three things. If you have many children, much money, and old age, then you're a happy person. And here's this guy, and he's got all of it. He's got everything that world, that culture that they thought was precious, but he does not have the ability to enjoy what he has. And the preacher even goes so far to say, it is better to have never been born, it is better to have never lived, than to live a life that is that meaningless. Here's my question. If God gave you, if God gave me, if God gave us all the desires of our heart, what would our life look like? If God said, I'll give you whatever you want, what would we want? What would we ask for? Would we ask what kind of house? What kind of clothes? What kind of a bank account? What would we want from that? And as we begin to think about that, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, if God gives us everything we want, where then does joy come from in that? You say, Michael, I'll tell you what, if I had a house with 15 bathrooms, that'd be a joyful life. There would be, I have my privacy, everything would be good, Michael. I would like that. Michael, if I had a house with M&M towers, are you kidding me? That would be a good life. If we have the stuff, but here's the thing. The novelty of stuff wears off. And then what are we left with? Money runs out, and then what are we left with? People's adulation runs out, and then what are we left with? See, we can have everything this world strives for. We can have everything this world offers and still not have any joy. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by the ruins of Pompeii. There's, it was almost just like this museum framed in time as Vesuvius exploded, and so many people were caught up in this sudden flow. And as archaeologists went and excavated, and it was just like everything was preserved, frozen in time. And I remember I had a book, and there was a picture that haunted me from that book. And it was a woman who was caught in her home. And her feet were pointed towards the door. But her body was twisted and she was reaching for something. It was a bag on the wall. And what archaeologists found was in that bag was pearls. And here she was, running for her life, trying to escape this sudden death. And her joy is in her stuff. I can't live without this. I can't find a meaningful existence without this. If I just have this, then I'll be happy, then I'll be fulfilled. Life is worth nothing without it. That's what's communicated by her actions. And that's how so often many of us act. If I don't have this stuff, then I can't be happy. If I don't have this stuff, then I can't be fulfilled. If my bank account isn't like this, then my life is meaningless. And what we are doing is we are bowing down at this altar of money. We are bowing down at this altar of stuff. Joy only comes from God. Can money give you happiness? It sure can. But happiness is temporary. Happiness can be taken from you. But joy cannot. Joy only comes from God. And gifts that God gives to us, we can only enjoy the gifts God gives us if we know the giver. I think that's what the preacher's point is. The only way we enjoy the gifts of life is to know the giver, because to just make life about the gifts, to divorce them from the God who gives them to us, is meaningless, because those things can be taken away, those things can dissipate, those things can flee. And if my happiness comes from those things, then my happiness will not last. But if my joy comes from the one who gives me the gifts of life, if my joy comes from knowing God, if my joy comes from being in fellowship with Him, then my joy is permanent. The writer of Ecclesiastes, the preacher here, he does something interesting, because he bookmarks this. He bookends this section with a lot of despair. The pursuit of wealth is vanity. And here is this man who has everything but has nothing. And his life is vain because he's just spent it chasing after the wind. But in the middle, the heart of this section is how he tells us we can have joy in life. It's how he shows us how we can find meaning and purpose. And it's by having a life of contentment. Instead of spending life pursuing other things, instead of spending life trying to always have more, the preacher says, it is good and fitting to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. Hear what he says? He says a life of contentment. God has blessed you. God has given you stuff. God has put things in your life. God has given you fruit for your labor. And life is spent well enjoying what God does give us, instead of trying to strive and focus on what God doesn't give us. Then we need to enjoy it. What he's saying here is we need to control our feelings about money instead of letting them control us. That's what a life of contentment is about. Is I control how I feel about money. I control how I think about money and how I think about possessions, instead of them controlling me. Because what we've looked at so far is what happens when those feelings and those thoughts control us. It leaves us empty. It leaves us broken. It leaves us desperate. But when I am able to be content with what God has given me, when I can rejoice in what God has given me, then I find joy in life. See, we need to see money not as the goal of life, but as a means to do good and bring enjoyment. Is money evil? No. The Bible doesn't say money is evil. The Bible doesn't say there's anything wrong with money. It is the love of money. It is a focus on money. It is a fixation on money that is sinful. But what the preacher here is telling us is God gives us these things for our pleasure, for our enjoyment. So that this short time that we do have in life, we can be blessed and we can be taken care of. And so my money is not the goal of life. It's a tool in life. It's a way that I can find enjoyment in life, and it's a way that I can do good and minister and bless others. Because you see what he says? He says God gives us the ability to earn money, and God alone gives us the ability to enjoy money. Only when I understand that everything I have is a gift from Him and it is something to be used for glorifying Him, only then can I truly enjoy it. When I view it as something that is mine, when it's something I've earned, when it's something I deserve, and it's all about making me happy, I'll never find satisfaction. But when I see this as a gift of God that He has put in my life so that I can glorify Him, then I can find joy with what He's given me. Contentment is about enjoying what God has given me instead of focusing on what I wish God would have given me. See what he says? He says, those to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, to accept His lot. To accept His lot. That is, you know how much God gives us? All we need. You know how much God gives us? What He trusts us with. And what God has given me, the stuff God has given me, the money God has given me, that is something for me to be grateful for. That is something for me to thank God for. He has given me this. And instead of saying, I need more to be happy, instead of saying, if I just had more stuff, I would be fulfilled, if I just had more, my problems would go away, I need to be thankful for what God has given me. You see, focusing on more is being thankless. You know, it's kind of a bummer. I know he's only 4, but Sarah and I, we pick out some birthday presents for Henry. We give them to him, and we've worked hard. We thought hard, and we give it to him, and he goes, what else did I get? And it just sucks the air out of you as a parent. But we do the same thing to God, don't we? God says, here, let me provide for you. Yeah, but God, what else is there? God, doesn't this come in a bigger model? God, there's nicer ones out there. Why just this? And instead of being thankful, and instead of praising God and saying, God, you are so gracious to give me this, we always want more. See, part of why God gives us money is for us to enjoy life. God gives us money so we can enjoy things. If I want a good meal, it doesn't work on the barter system anymore. I can't just go into a restaurant and say, I got some pelts here. What can you give me for these pelts? I need money to do that. I need money to go on vacation, to have relaxation, to spend time with my family. That money is a gift from God. And though maybe I can't always do all I want to do, I can be thankful and I can enjoy what God has given me. The preacher says 3 times in verse 13 and verse 15, and then in chapter 6, several times. Well, yeah, he says in chapter 6 that it is a grievous evil. It is a grievous evil to hoard money and not enjoy what God has given us. You understand, it is a sin to be greedy, but it is also a sin to be tight. I'm not talking about being wise with your money. I'm talking about those people who go in and they see those give a penny, take a penny, and they think, well, it says take a penny, and if they didn't want me to do it, they wouldn't put that there. Right? Those people who, man, they hold on to everything so tight that they're cheap, that they always take advantage of other people. That is the same sin. It is a sin of thinking that my comfort and my security and my happiness and my hope comes from money. This man in chapter 6, he dies with everything, but he doesn't take any of it with him. To spend our life hoarding, to spend our life holding on to stuff and clenching tightly in our fists instead of using it for us to enjoy life, instead of using it for us to bless others. It is a sin. It is God giving it to us for us to use, not for us to just put and to keep. Contentment says that it's about enjoying what God has given me instead of focusing on what I wish He would give me. But contentment also says I do not need anything more than what God has given me in order to have joy. This really comes down to our idea of who God is. If I'm content in who God is, if I'm trusting in who God is, then I realize that what God has given me is enough. If I buy into the lie that I have to have more stuff or I have to have more money in order to be happy and secure, then what I am saying is God is withholding from me. What I am saying is God's really not good. Contentment comes when I'm able to enjoy what God has given me. Contentment comes when I'm able to say, God's given me enough to have joy. God's given me enough to rejoice in Him. God's given me enough to enjoy this life that He's given me. And when I stop feeling like I need more and I'm start just seeing everything that God has put in my life as grace, that's where joy comes from. Do you understand? If I feel like God needs to give me more, then what I'm doing is I feel like God is withholding from me and He is not a good God. But when I see everything in my life as grace, then I'm able to go, wow, God loves me. God is taking care of me. God has provided for me. If all my thoughts are dedicated to thinking there's something more God's withholding from me, God is being stingy, God is being cruel, God is taunting me, I can't have joy. But when I see everything as grace, that's where my joy comes from. But finally, contentment is the only way to keep our priorities right. How do we make sure we control our money instead of our money controlling us? It's by having our priorities right. And over, when the Bible speaks of money, what it speaks of is generosity. You know how I control greed? You know how I fight greed in my life? It's by being a generous person. Think about it. When God establishes the nation of Israel, God gives them these tithes. Now, it's a misnomer to think that they were only required to tithe 10% because they had several. Really, your average Israelite was giving between 30 and 35% of their income every year back to God. Why did God do that? Did God do that because He needed the money? Did God do it because His funds were running low? Why did God do that? He did it because when we give back to Him, it's a way that we remember who's really in control. It's a way of showing where our heart is. And when we give to God, it's a way that we are controlling our money instead of our money controlling us. When I give to God by giving to spread His gospel, when I give to God by seeking to bless somebody else, when I give to God by showing kindness to somebody, what I am doing is I'm saying this money is not for me. This money is not about making my life better. This money is not about just doing what I want with it or finding fulfillment in it. This money is a tool that I can use to honor God and to glorify Him. See, God put that system in place so that the Israelites would understand it's not about us. But if you read into the Old Testament and into the ministry of Jesus, what is everybody doing? Now, Jesus, do we tithe before or after tax? Jesus, okay, 10%. 10% now, is that gross or net income? And you hear the questions, what is there not? There's not generosity. As those who have been given everything by God, we hold everything loosely in our hands so that God can use it for His purposes. If I buy myself something, it may bring temporary happiness. But if I use it to bless somebody else, if I use it to minister in the name of Christ, if I use it to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth, that has ramifications into eternity. And God has given me this money not as a means to my happiness, but as a tool for His glory. So Jesus came and Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and they may have it abundantly. And an interesting thing happened. When Jesus said that, nobody got any richer. Jesus said, I came that they may have life and may have it abundantly. Their bank accounts didn't rise all of a sudden. They didn't get promotions at work. They didn't get raises. Why? Because money is not the means to an abundant life. Money is a way to have more stuff. But the amount of stuff we have and the amount of money we have has nothing to do with the richness of our life. The only way I can have joy, the only way I can have meaning, the only way I can have fulfillment and satisfaction in my life is when I'm living it for God, when I'm living it for His purposes, and when I take everything that I have and realize it is a token of His grace and I give it back to Him. When I say, God, how can I use this to honor you? God, how can I use this to bless you? God, how can I use this to take care of my family? God, how can I use this to minister to other people? God, how can I use this to meet somebody's need? When I am saying, God, this money that you have given me, it is yours. How would you have me spend it? I am not being controlled by it. I'm being controlled by the giver, not by the gift. And we as Christians, we as the people of God, we need to stop spending our life in pursuit of the more. And we need to spend our life celebrating what God has given us. So a people who have been shown grace cannot spend their lives grasping. People who have been shown grace ought not spend their life saying, I need more, I have to have more, I want more, this is mine. When I understand the grace I have been shown in God sending His Son, Jesus, to live a sinless life, to die on the cross, to raise from the dead, to intercede before the throne of the Father on my behalf, I realize I have everything I need. I have more than I could ever want. And I don't need to waste my life chasing after wind. I need to spend my life fellowshipping with God and seek to minister to others on His behalf and enjoy the life that He has given me for His glory. Let's bow our heads. Father, Lord, we thank You so much for all that You give us. We thank You so much for all You do for us. And Lord, I pray that we see grace in everything You do. We see grace in everything we have. Father, our life is from You. Our gifts are from You. You give us the ability to earn. You give us the ability to work. You give us the ability to enjoy what You have given us. Father, may we not waste our lives always needing more, but may we enjoy our lives celebrating what You have done and in the process celebrating You. You are a good and a gracious God, and everything we have is from You. As James says, everything good and perfect comes from above, from the Father of lights, with whom there is no shifting or changing of shadows. Father, everything is from You. And Your grace in my life is abundant. It is overwhelming. May I be thankful for that. May I enjoy and rejoice in what You have given me, in the lot You have entrusted me with. And Father, I pray that my heart will not buy into the lies that I need more in order to be happy, or I need newer in order to be happy. But that I understand, because of who You are and the way You work, I can have total joy, a joy that is unremovable, a joy that will not go away based on what You've given me. I can have a joy because I have You. I can have a joy because I have a relationship with You through Your Son. Father, help our hearts to not be greedy. Lord, I pray that if there's anyone here this morning who doesn't know You through Jesus, Father, I pray that they would understand the tremendous gift of grace that You gave us in the life of Christ. You bought our salvation with His blood. And Father, I pray if there's someone here who doesn't know that, who hasn't put their faith in what you've done, Lord, this morning they would receive that gracious gift you offer them. Father, may we follow however you lead. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.